Hey guys, for years the defining mystery at the heart of Game of Thrones has been who will sit on the Iron Throne when the series is over. In a span of 6 seasons, King's Landing has had 4 rulers seated on the Throne of Power: Robert Baratheon, Joffrey, and Tommen Lannister Baratheon, and now Cersei Lannister. Most fans seem to support Jon's claim through his father Rhaegar Targaryen. As the show made it plain in the season 7 finale, Jon Snow is not only Rhaegar's bastard son, but true and legitimate heir to the Iron Throne. The Targaryens ruled Westeros for hundreds of years, and Prince Rhaegar was legally wed to Lyanna Stark, making the bastard Jon Snow an actual Prince Aegon Targaryen. If you follow the hereditary monarchy, Jon Snow, just as Bran Stark stated, is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. However, that's not a role he wants to take on. But frankly, he did not want to be king in the north, but he accepted it for the sake of his people, so he might accept the role of the king of all Westeros for the sake of his people as well. Some used to believe Littlefinger would outwit them all and take the throne for himself, and now that he's dead, some are speculating that Varys has an important role yet to play. Others, on the other hand, love to argue that Dany is the true heir to the Iron Throne and deserves to rule over the Seven Kingdoms. Dany made reclaiming the Iron Throne her mission at the end of Season 1. Her entire journey since then has been about one thing: making that happen. Whether she'll seal the deal though is another story entirely. Some of the best players in the Game of Thrones, Tyrion and Varys, believe that with the right counsel she'd make a great ruler. Last season we've learned that the prophecy about the prince that was promised doesn't necessarily stand for a male only, as the proper translation of the prophecy is the prince or princess that was promised. It looks as if the show is setting her up for success, but that might not be good for Dany. Fans have learned their lesson about predictability more than once with this series, leading us to consider a possibility of Dany dying in a childbirth, just like her own mother did, or even dying during the Great War against the Night King. But what if every character fans see fit ruling Westeros are to die before the end of Game of Thrones? In that case, fans believe that the Night King would win and end up on the Iron Throne. With the Night King destroying huge portion of the wall and marching south with huge army and a dragon, more and more fans seem to think that in the end he might sit on the throne. Even though the Night King will be a huge danger for Westeros, and even though the living side will suffer tremendous losses, it's been pretty much confirmed by George R. R. Martin that he will be defeated eventually, but at what cost, one would ask. I've said before that the tone of the ending that I'm going for is bittersweet. It ends with victory, but it's a bittersweet victory, George R. R. Martin stated. According to the Daily Telegraph in 2015, George said something along the line: "Killing the Night King will not be the end of Game of Thrones, and instead the final battle will be with Cersei." That's a strong hint revealed by no less than George R. R. Martin. What this means is, even if Jon Snow dies fighting the Night King and Dany dies in childbirth, the living side would indeed lose great leaders, but the war would not be lost just yet. It's more likely that Tyrion would take the leadership of the living side, with Jaime commanding and leading the armies against the army of the dead, while Missandei will take care of Jon and Dany's child, while the war is still ravaging. Long story short, if Jon and Dany are to die in, let's say, episode 5 of season 8, the final episode would see the living side under Tyrion's leadership against the Night King, while Cersei would still be on the throne. Basically, the Night King will be defeated, Cersei will sit on the Iron Throne, while Jon could die fighting the Night King and Dany could potentially die in childbirth. Pretty bittersweet. There's even the Game of Thrones book clue hinting that neither Dany nor Jon Snow will end up ruling Westeros. Unlike the TV show, which is able to maintain an omniscient viewpoint across a sprawling ensemble cast, George R. R. Martin's The Song of Ice and Fire novels are told from a strict third-person perspective, with each chapter told from a specific character's singular point of view. That means the books can never feature scenes between non-point of view characters. What does this have to do with our question: who will win the Game of Thrones? Well, once you've read all 5 of Martin's novels, it becomes apparent that the author never writes from the point of view of a monarch. King Robert was never a point of view character. None of the would-be rulers involved in the War of the Five Kings were point of view characters. Neither King Beyond the Wall, Mance Rayder, nor young King Tommen were ever point of view characters. Rather, Robb's story was told from the perspective of his mother Catelyn, Stannis' through Davos, Mance's through Jon, Tommen's through Cersei, etc. So unless George R. R. Martin suddenly decides to change the fundamental way he has approached his story for 5 novels, thousands of pages and 22 years, nobody who has been a point of view character will end up on the Iron Throne. And yes, Cersei does have a point of view chapters in the books, but she's not sitting on the Iron Throne as she does in the show. As showrunners and George R. R. Martin highlighted multiple times, the road towards the end of this amazing journey will be different, meaning some characters that are dead in the show will and actually already are alive in the books, and some characters that are ruling in the show do not rule in the books. However, they also stated that the end of this road will be the same, meaning that the ending will be the same, and whoever wins the Game of Thrones in the show will win in the books as well. In the end, it's likely that A Song of Ice and Fire will end the same way it began, as the story of cripples, bastards and broken things, and not the story of kings and queens. So if none of the story's protagonists are destined to rule Westeros, additionally main heroes are likely to die, then who will win the Game of Thrones? The assumed requirement that it be a non-point of view character certainly seems to support the theory that Gendry will be the king, claiming the throne as the sole surviving offspring of late King Robert Baratheon. Gendry is the sole living heir to Robert and House Baratheon altogether. Gendry is a contender worth of mentioning. He's young, he's fearless, and he wields that warhammer just like his father used to. Gendry is motivated solely by revenge against the Lannisters who killed his father, and not at all by power. That could take him beyond than he expected. He's what kickstarted the entire saga when Jon Arryn was killed shortly after he found out the truth about Gendry. It would be quite a twist if the search for an heir to the Seven Kingdoms would actually end with him on the Iron Throne. Joe Dempsey, who plays the dark-haired blacksmith with the magical king's blood, told Digital Spy that even though he wasn't sure he would ever return to the series at all, we are probably going to see a lot of him in the 8th and final season, since he's been filming a fair bit for the last 6 episodes. Being a part of the endgame means he has also a whole raft of new secrets to keep, and it's not unthinkable to think he could be holding on the ultimate secret. Gendry will end the show sitting on the Iron Throne. There are questions if a bastard could ever ascend to the throne, but it's still possible that Gendry is in fact a legitimate son of King Robert, as many believe he might be Cersei's black-haired son. Cersei claims he had died shortly after his birth, and Cersei on the other hand might be the blonde-haired mother Gendry remembers. There are plenty more clues and hints that support this theory of Gendry being a legitimate son of Queen Cersei and King Robert Baratheon. If you'd like to see them, make sure to check out my previous videos. Anyways, Gendry has another important blood relation in his favor. He is the descendant of a Targaryen. Robert's grandmother was Princess Rhaegar Targaryen, the youngest daughter of King Aegon V Targaryen. Maesters used these blood ties to House Targaryen to justify Robert's claim after Robert's rebellion, although it was conquest which won him the throne. Gendry is his son Robert and has both Baratheon and Targaryen blood and maybe even Lannisters. That's a pretty good start. A few other things would have to fall in place, or rather, a few other people would have to fall for Gendry to end up on the throne, but we'll come back to that. Gendry sitting on the Iron Throne might sound impossible to some. The idea that a minor character who literally vanished for half the show's run could end up winning. But there's a quote from Season 2 Episode 7 that's always felt like it could be a harbinger of the show's endgame. The quote says, "Those on the margins often come to control the center, and those in the center make room for them willingly or otherwise." The character was talking about himself and his position in Karth, but on the show where the Mother of Dragons was wandering in the desert and the legitimate son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark was hiding in plain sight, it carries a lot of meaning for the entire show. But what if the answer is not as obvious as a major character? No one was more on the margins than Gendry. But of course both Jon and Dany are still alive, and both would have much better claims to the Iron Throne than Gendry. Gendry is part Targaryen, which, along with him being the last of the Baratheon line, would give him a claim to the Iron Throne if Dany, Jon and Cersei all died during the battle against the Night King. At the end, the most possible theory in my opinion regarding who will win the Game of Thrones and sit on the Iron Throne is no one. Dany said she wanted to break the wheel more than once and Tyrion agreed. With the Great War eventually being won and with Cersei overthrown, with or without Dany alive, it's quite possible that the wheel she wanted to break will be shattered entirely. A new world order might be exactly what Westeros needs to rebuild itself. In my opinion, Jon Snow will die fighting the Night King, Dany will die in a childbirth, and Tyrion will be named Lord Regent and Protector of the Realm, to rule in Jon and Dany's stead until their child comes of age. Tyrion will then break up the kingdom and allow the various parts of it to self-govern once again, fulfilling Dany's wish of breaking the wheel and in fact ending the Game of Thrones once for all. Describing Dany's final on-screen moments, Emilia Clarke told Vanity Fair, "It f***ed up," knowing that it's going to be a lasting flavor in someone's mouth of what Dany is. This sounds interesting. Had Dany's story ended good, would Clarke really feel this way? Or is it just the thought of ending that makes her feel this way? Even more intriguingly, Clarke added that Dany will be doing all this weird shit in Season 8, and adding, "You'll know what I mean when you see it." Other actors, such as an actress who plays Brienne, told E! News, "We're going to need therapy after the final season is over." When reporter asked, "So someone dies?" Christie replied, "I think just the show ending is going to send all of the world into professional help." Could this be a hint that this theory might come true? Jon and Dany die, Tyrion survives and raises their child and fulfills Dany's dreams. Perhaps. Then again, the recently released tease seems to be foreshadowing that Jon survives the Game of Thrones, with him looking old on his statue, hinting that he might die at a very old age. It's highly possible that some of the Starks will not survive the final season. Now, is it Jon who is half Stark, half Targaryen, or is it Arya or Sansa or Bran is unclear. Speaking to Digital Spy, Sophie Turner, who plays Sansa, was quick to dismiss the idea that her new "Do Pax Survives" tattoo, a Stark slogan, constitutes a spoiler, pointing out that would be terrible if I got the ending tattooed on my body just before the last season came out. That would be so stupid. So if it's not spoiling anything, is it an official confirmation that some of the Starks are going to die? Maybe. The teaser seems to suggest that it might be Sansa or and Arya with them looking young on their statues. However, I would not say Jon surviving is confirmed just because he looks old on his statue. For example, the tease of Season 6 shows Jon, Tyrion's and Dany's face among all other being in the Hall of Faces. Did any of them die in that season, or did they join the Faceless Men? No, therefore this tease is probably not spoiling fate of the Starks. It may, but probably is not. An actor who plays Jaime Lannister hinted that there will be more shocking deaths of beloved characters as the show concludes, because it just makes sense in terms of storytelling. Nikolai said even the most extreme things have been driven by story. At this point in the show, you're reaping the rewards of the work that's been put into all these characters. As an audience member, you're kind of invested into every single one of these people, which is, I should not talk about the ending here. Finally, Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister, also shared his thoughts about the final season. I think it's going to be the best season of television anyone has ever seen. It takes you to a place that you never saw coming, that I didn't see coming. He added, just be prepared, it's a fun ride. So the Game of Thrones stars promise that the final season is going to be the best season ever and its ending will not please everyone, will leave us in need for therapy, and that will shock us. At the end, there are many ways to end the Game of Thrones. In my opinion, one of the most likely ways the Game of Thrones will end is with Jon Snow dying fighting the Night King, likely killing each other, Dany dying in a childbirth and Tyrion being named Lord Regent and Protector of the Realm to rule in Jon and Dany's child's stead until the child comes of age. This ending sounds even more possible when you remember that Game of Thrones' ending has been promised to be bittersweet. During his rule, Tyrion would likely break up the kingdom and allow the various parts of it to self-govern, fulfilling Dany's wish of breaking the wheel and in fact ending the Game of Thrones once for all. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.